It has been almost 10 years since the development of Dead Island by Techland and its release by Deep Silver. The game released in North America on September 6, 2011, to high critical acclaim. With the average rating of 8.5 across IGN, GameSpot, and PC Gamer, it's no surprise that this game has multiple sequels including Dead Island Riptide, Escape Dead Island, and Dead Island 2, which has had a development cycle that can be described as bumpy. But that's a story for another day. Today we're going to ask the question, after almost 10 years, does Dead Island still hold up? We will start by breaking it into 6 categories. They will be melee, gunplay, vocals, graphics, the amount of content, and the story. Without further ado, let's just dive right in. The melee in Dead Island, while there's nothing particularly special about it, is fairly solid. There's not a lot that makes it stand out amongst other games with a heavy melee focus like Dead Rising or hell, even Skyrim. But when you start comparing the mechanics to games like Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine, a game released in the same year, it begins to fall short. Melee works by swinging your weapon at enemies. I wish I could say more on that or go into better detail, but there's not a ton more to say, unfortunately. Aiming for certain body parts can either remove them with a sharp weapon or break them with a blunt object, both of which can be extremely advantageous in specific circumstances. There are not really any attack combos similar to what you can do in other games like Space Marine, and you are unable to perform heavy attacks. The best you can do is swing your weapon at a standard speed and hope your timing is correct, or you are basically going to hit nothing. Swinging your weapon also eats stamina. Being low on stamina means a couple of different bad things. One is that you'll end up being unable to see as well or as far, making it difficult to see oncoming enemies. On top of that, you will also become unable to run. Considering you'll be spending a large amount of time running, being unable to run can be extremely bad. Weapon degradation is extremely annoying, and is difficult to manage. Later in the game, weapon repairs can get extremely pricey, and you have a better chance with your fist than you do a broken weapon. Timing your attacks is huge in this game. With no real dodge mechanics, it's very difficult to get into a horde and efficiently kill zombies, especially against some of the bigger zombies like the Thug and Floater. Some sort of dash or dodge mechanics would have been amazing here. For these reasons, I'm going to give the melee mechanics a 5 out of 10. It was there, and while it worked okay in the context of the game, considering the significant part it plays in the game makes it feel extremely lackluster. Holy shit, where to even begin with the gunplay? In an age of games with amazing shooting mechanics like Battlefield 3, Modern Warfare 3, and Crysis 2, which I will be reviewing in the future, how did you get this so wrong? As if it wasn't enough that ADSing does not help your aim at all despite making you move slower, the ADS reticle is not even placed right. Bullets always hit below the ADS reticle, meaning that if you were to follow the reticle, you're never going to hit your target. Along with that, the mechanics feel spongier than a well-known underwater square-panted character that gets yelled at by a certain squid. There is a distinct lack whenever aiming your gun, making it hard to snap the targets. Let's move on from this before I get frustrated. 2 out of 10. It was there, but I would rather it wasn't. What can I say? The vocals in this game are very solid. Voices are clear and easy to understand. Accents are solid, though it is fairly difficult to differentiate a nationality other than Jamaican and Australian on anyone who's not blatantly American. There were a few good touches that I found particularly successful to help with making the game more interesting. One of which was the Suicider, where you could hear the zombie, or the person that became the zombie, whispering, "Help me." This was a nice touch, and it was a good idea. For these reasons, I'm giving the vocals a 9 out of 10. It's really hard to justify the graphics in this game. They really do not hold up. Not only does everything look blocky, it also looks extremely flat. It is extremely easy to see that they focused on low poly models and relied heavily on the skin overlay to save the image. While skin overlay works extremely well, it should be used with a more convincing lighting to be able to be used to its full potential. There were some neat tricks in Definitive Edition that I found to be quite interesting, like the translucent skin on the floaters, though these things are missing from the original game, which is really unfortunate that they were able to add tricks like that but not improve on item skin shadow. Certain skins looked blurry for what was presumably no reason. Things like your hands and oftentimes held items looked extremely blurry. I don't know if this was to assist performance, but there were other tricks that they could have used for that. It is just a little weird seeing your hands and not being able to tell where the fingernail begins or ends due to the hands being a blurry mess. While they are not terrible for their time, they are also not great. This was the same year Crysis 2 dropped, as well as Gears of War 3, both of which had extremely good graphics for their time. Not to mention, this was also the same year Portal 2 dropped, which had insanely good graphics. I personally think the biggest issue was the lack of round shapes. Just look at the roads and you'll see that none of the corners are properly or convincingly smooth. They have jagged edges, making it evident where corners were cut in development. I'm giving the graphics a 5 out of 10. A bit below average, but not as bad as they could have been. Looking at you, LA Noire. The amount of content in this game is great. If you bum rush the main story, you can have the game done in 12 hours flat, which is quite a decent amount of time for games like this. Not to mention you have plentiful side quests that will keep you occupied for hours on end. The side quests can get repetitive as they are mostly fetch quests, but they don't take too long and they pay decently enough. I would like to see more rewards for the missions in the form of money instead of weapons, but I'm greedy like that, so take that as you will. The side quests are also very useful for getting the most powerful weapons in the game, which helps a ton later game. I'm giving the amount of content a 10 out of 10. There's plenty of content to keep you playing for hours on end. On top of that, there's a decent amount of replayability either with friends or by yourself with different specialized characters. I should not need to say this considering it has been damn near 10 years, but spoiler alert. The story is fairly basic in the beginning with a bunch of people being stranded at a tropical resort. The resort is suffering from an epidemic that is causing the dead to come alive, and while it seems like a fairly cut and dry story, Techland somehow managed to make it weird. General gist of the story is that after waking up on a beach with a bunch of survivors, you and your friends must escape the island. You cannot call for help as there is a huge storm coming, and the only source of information you have is a mysterious voice that sometimes calls you over the radio. You spend the first half of the game getting resources for survivors, helping them gather food and water as you are the only one who is immune to the disease. You end up finding out after getting a better radio that the mysterious voice is coming from an offshore prison that has a minefield around it. The only person who knows how to get there is deep in the jungle. You go there, and the person who you were told would help you says he does not know the way, and instead points you to a lab where zombies are coming from. You agree to go, because reasons. At the lab, you discover the disease had existed on the island forever, and the natives had a cannibalistic ritual around it where they would be resurrected. The original strain of the disease was fairly harmless, but for some reason it began mutating at a rapid pace. You also find out that you are most likely immune to the disease because your blood type, O negative. You leave the lab and end up bringing back a native, which the head doctor ends up becoming a dick to, and she locks herself in a cage. The doctor then accidentally unlocks all the cages to get to her, releasing all the cage zombies and killing everyone in the lab, though she is still safe because she is still in her cage. You are told that the doctor had developed a cure, so you end up taking that from the lab. After rescuing her and bringing her back to the guide dude, he then says that he does know the way and originally lied about it for reasons. You bum rush it to an Australian soldier that stole the cure off of you for his infected wife. His zombie wife gets released and he gets bit. He ends up injecting himself with the cure, where the cure fails entirely, transforming him into a zombie immediately and making him super buff and into the final boss fight. After killing him, you get in his helicopter and fly off home, where one person says the world will never be the same again, the meaning of which we will probably not know until Dead Island 2 releases at some point. Honestly, we're getting to Duke Nukem Forever levels of never coming out, and we all know what happened with that game. The story, while not being bad, felt like the writing team was consisted of multiple groups that didn't communicate, and everyone involved had ADD. While it is linear, it changes theme every 5 seconds from Paradise Lost to Mad Science to Far Cry to Tomb Raider back to Paradise Lost, and then to Government Conspiracy. It's all over the place with the themes, which is fairly frustrating at points. I gave the story a 7 out of 10. If it was more consistent with the themes, it would be a lot easier to track. The final does it hold up score I'm giving Dead Island is a 4.5 out of 10. There are many things it did well that games today could easily learn from, but on the same card there are many things it did wrong that many games could learn from. I know Techland fixed many of these issues with Dying Light, like the gunplay and the graphics, which I will give them props for, as unlike many other game development companies, they learned from their mistakes and produced a better product because of it. It'll be interesting going forward to see if they ever do end up coming up with Dead Island 2, but that is something that only time will tell. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. If you didn't, be sure to tell me why in the comments section. I would like to do more of these videos, so any constructive criticism helps.